We're chapter 8 today. Uh, this first 15 verses deals with genuine benevolence, seen in the example of the Macedonians and the zeal of the Corinthians. Sometimes we forget about the Corinthians being included here in Paul's praise of their willingness to give, but they are, and we'll point that out as we go through. But this is a good chapter, chapter 8 and chapter 9 actually. If you want to study about giving, this is a good place to start because there's a lot of information on how we're supposed to give. Giving is a very personal decision. It's not the tithe anymore where we just do what we're told. Now we've got to figure it out for ourselves. It's a matter of love. It's what it boils down to. We are motivated by love, and of course, if we're motivated by love, then everything's good. I mean, we're going to do the right thing, whatever that may be, and it's always different for different people. But it's good to understand the basis of that motivation. So we'll see how Paul does in this particular place. Moreover, brethren, we make known to you the grace of God bestowed on churches of Macedonia. We talked about that last week. They had received grace, and they were so appreciative of the grace they had received that they just had to share it with somebody else, and that's what they were out to do. In a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy, their deep poverty, abounded in the riches of their liberality. They were living in a very difficult time in Macedonia. We've talked about that. Paul had a hard time while he was in Macedonia. Well, all the Christians did, because they were under fire by the various persecutors. And even though they were under such fierce persecution, their joy was so abundant that even though they were poor, like the widow with the mites, nevertheless, they abounded in the riches of their liberality. They gave generously, much more than Paul thought they were capable of. And it was because they appreciated the grace they had received. They understood that by grace, by the gift of God's Son, they had been enabled to obtain forgiveness of their sins and have eternal life, which is everything. And therefore, to them, their material things just weren't of great consequence. And they were very happy to share it with God's people. I bear witness that according to their ability, and they went beyond their ability in his opinion. I've seen that before. I remember one time when I found out that one of our sisters was going the last 2 or 3 days of the month not eating. And I went to find out what was happening, and come to find out she ran out of money. And she didn't draw much. She was on Social Security, and she didn't draw much. It's been some time back, 30 years, I guess, or more. And we got to talking about how money disappears real quick. And she was telling me how she used her money. And then she told me how much she put in the collection plate each week. And I asked her, I said, you think you should give so much? And she said, well, that's not much. I said, well, for you, it's a lot. You know, you're not supposed to run out of food. And I tried to talk her into not giving as much. And I couldn't do it. No matter what I said, she bound and determined to keep up her giving. I was ashamed, to tell you the truth, because she was so willing to to give, even to the point where it hurt. Anyway, we fixed it up where she didn't have to go without food the rest of the month. This is the way the Macedonians were. According to their ability, yes, they went beyond their ability. They were freely willing. It was of their own free will. That's why they gave as they did. Imploring us, begging us with much urgency that we would receive the gift and the fellowship of the ministering of the saints. It appears that Paul probably did what I did and tried to get them not to give so much. And he was unsuccessful. They instead begged him to take the money. They wanted to do this because of their gratitude. Think about that now. Gratitude for divine grace. They were grateful that God had blessed them so mightily. And that's something we should always try to keep in the forefront of our mind. It's easy sometimes to forget that we're here by the grace of God and that all of our hopes rest in God. And sometimes because we forget, we tend to not appreciate like we should. And we don't want to be guilty of that. So we have to examine ourselves from time to time and make sure we know who we are and why we are what we are. And not only did they give as we hoped, but they first gave themselves to the Lord. That was the key. They first gave themselves to the Lord. If you can do that, the rest of it's downhill. That's kind of summarized in the first two great commands. Love God first, love your neighbor as yourself second. If you can do that, this is it. You have given yourself to the Lord. Once you've done that, everything else is immaterial. It's all going to fall into place. Your decisions are made already because you gave yourself to the Lord, and every decision that follows isn't going to be our own decision, but it's going to be the decision of God, what God would have us to do. That'll always come first. They first gave themselves to the Lord, and then they gave money to us by the will of God, for Judea, of course. So we urge Titus that as he had begun, so he would also complete this grace in you as well. His job was to remind the Corinthians of a promise they had made a year earlier, that they were going to send funds to Judea when Paul came by collecting money. And the story is kind of like this. Paul is collecting money in Macedonia, and he's bragging about the Corinthians to the Macedonians. Oh, the Corinthians, they're so great. A year ago, they said they would take up so much money, and when I come back a year later, they would have it ready for me to pick up, and I can get on a ship and sail over to Syria. And the people, they were impressed with the Corinthians because of their great generosity. These were in the most pagan city in the world. And nevertheless, they were willing to take their monies and give it to a bunch of Jews, which was unheard of amongst the Gentile people. And the Macedonians were spurred that they were going to do likewise. Well, Paul got to wondering, because of all the problems that's going on at Corinth, what if he goes to Corinth and they've changed their mind? Well, these Macedonians, some of them, several, are going to travel with him. He wants them to go with him so that they can be witnesses to the fact that the Macedonian funds did reach Judea. So they're going to go with him from Macedonia down to Corinth, and if the Corinthians have changed their mind, Paul's going to look like a big boob standing there because he's done all this bragging about how great they are. and now all of a sudden they decided to tighten up and not send any funds. So to keep that from happening, he sent Titus ahead of him to remind them of the promise they had made, so that they would be sure to have that money ready to go when he got there, so he wouldn't look so silly in front of the Macedonians. Now, that's the context in which this discourse is going to be laid out. With that in mind, we can continue. Titus's job was to complete this grace in you, the offering, that is, you of Corinth. But as you abound in everything, in faith and speech and knowledge and all diligence, and in your love for us, see that you abound in this grace also. They had several miraculous gifts, apparently. They had made some progress as Christian peoples. They were still weak in the faith, let's say, but they had made quite a bit of progress while Paul was with them there. But he wants to make sure that they haven't forgotten to appreciate divine grace. And as they've received, so they need to pass along to others. I speak not by commandment, but I am testing the sincerity of your love. We're going to see how much you love God, and we'll see how much you love your fellow man by your offering. A refusal to give, of course, will be demonstration of a lack of love, but a generous offering would demonstrate, perhaps, a great love. I am testing the sincerity of your love by the diligence of others, the Macedonians. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that even though he was rich, you know, I still can't grasp it. The fact that Jesus would leave heaven and come here and live as he did and be murdered. It's I don't know. It would have been so easy just to have said, "Oh, skip it." You know, I don't need them. But the love of God for what he saw us moved him to go through this awful experience that he lived through. He was rich. He had no reason to. He had no need to. But because he loved us, who he hadn't even seen, he did it anyway. I don't know. It just blows my mind. Though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, became a man, and that you, through his poverty, might become rich. Through his sad experience, we could become rich also, that we could be forgiven of our sins and live with God in heaven. That's grace. No matter how you slice it, that's grace. And in this, I give advice. It is to your advantage, not only to be doing what you began a year ago and were desiring to do a year ago, but now you also must complete the doing of it. You wanted to do it. You were in the process of doing it. Now you got to make sure you got the job done so that when I get there, the money will be waiting on me. That as there was a readiness to desire it, so there also may be a completion out of what you have. I raised about at least 10 tobacco crops back in my younger days. I only put one crop in the barn, but I raised about 10. Long about Christmas every year when I had my tobacco check, I would think how much tobacco I set out next year. And I would calculate how much money I would make when I sold it. And boy, I'd have a good crop and everything would be just fine. Well, I raised the crop in my mind, but when it came time to actually do it, I didn't I didn't raise anything. Every year I would think, I'm going to raise a crop of tobacco again next year. And then I wouldn't do it. In my mind, I wanted to raise a crop of tobacco. But when it come time to do the labor, I didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it again. It just wasn't worth it to me. And I never did do it. I raised 2 crops, the first and the last. And it was over. Sometimes it's easier to desire something than it is to complete it. It's easy to think of, I want to do this. But when it comes time to pay the piper, I don't want to pay the piper. I don't want to do it. That's where they are, or that's where Paul's worried they are. You desired it a year ago. You were eager a year ago. Make sure you finish what you started. Make sure you plant your crop. For if there is first a willing mind, it is accepted according to what one has, and not according to what he does not have. The Lord doesn't expect from us what we don't have, but he does expect a demonstration of love from what we do have. That's one of the unique things about the Christian religion. Under Judaism, it was a tithe. The widow with the 2 mites, she couldn't afford a tithe. It just wasn't in her grasp. And under the Christian dispensation, it's what a person is capable of. It's very different than just a flat law or a flat percentage of money. You may not be able to give or do what another person does. The Lord doesn't expect you to. You're different. You have different abilities. You have a different economic situation. You've got a different family. Your situation and my situation are 2 different situations, and you can't compare one against the other. And God doesn't. He doesn't expect me to do what the people with a lot of money do. He only expects me to do with what I have. And this is what he's reminding the Corinthians of. If there's a willing mind, the rest will take care of itself. It all comes back to the heart, man. It's all what we are. If we are what we're supposed to be, everything take care of itself. You got to get the heart right, and when the heart's right, everything is good. For I do not mean that others should be eased and you burdened. It doesn't seem fair that we have to take up and give to them people in Judea. Let them take care of themselves. That just ain't right. That's socialism. I hate socialism. I do not mean that others should be eased and you burdened. That's not the point of this exercise. But by an equality in the church now we're talking about, that now, at this moment in time, your abundance may supply their lack. At this moment in time, you have money. The people in Judea do not, okay? And according to the system, the Christian system, you are to use your overflow to help take care of these who have nothing, okay? That should be the least we would want to do, since we are recipients of divine grace. At this moment in time, your abundance may supply their lack, that their abundance also may supply your lack. The shoe may be on the other foot in 5 years. It may be the people in Judea who has the money, and the people in Corinth, the Christian people in Corinth, who have none. And if that's the case, it's going to be, the Judeans are going to be bound to give of their overflow for the sake of the Corinthians who are suffering from hard times. It's a system of equality where we help one another when we need help from one another. That there may be equality, Paul said. As it is written, he who gathered much had nothing left over. He who gathered little had no lack. It's about being willing to help people who need our help, our brothers and sisters who need our help, and when the shoe's on the other foot, being willing to accept help from our brothers and sisters when we're in need of help. It works in both directions. It's not socialism. We're talking about a situation where people are just down and out due to circumstances beyond their control. In this case, a famine in Judea. They just weren't able to provide for themselves at that time. Some people say it's socialism. No. Some of our brethren pump socialism. No. Jesus is not a socialist. He's a capitalist. If you don't work, neither should you eat. That's capitalism. That's not socialism. Anyway, number 3, good stewardship is an example to others. Chapter 9. We'll be going through these pretty quick because they're almost self-explanatory. First 15 verses. Now, concerning the ministering to the saints, it is superfluous, it is unnecessary for me to write to you. For I know your willingness, about which I boast of you to the Macedonians, that Achaia was ready a year ago, and your zeal has stirred up the majority. It's what we discussed a moment ago. Yet I have sent the brethren, lest our boasting of you should be in vain in this respect, that, as I said, you may be ready. Lest if some Macedonians come with me, and they find you unprepared, we, not to mention you, should be ashamed of this confident boasting. We'll look just awful after all we've boasted about you to these Macedonians. Therefore, I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren to go to you ahead of time, prepare your generous gift beforehand, which you had previously promised, that it may be ready as a matter of generosity and not as a grudging obligation. Two attitudes. I want to give, and the other is I have to give. I have to give is not a good attitude. The Lord doesn't care for that. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. He who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. I wonder if that's true. Well, you know, if the Lord said it's true, right? It has to be the case. I know that if I sow sparingly, I'll reap that way. And if I sow bountifully, I'll reap bountifully. And there's a lot of ways to sow and reap bountifully. If I sow bountifully, and my family is in good health and doing well as individual people, you think I came out ahead? Well, sure you will. You know, we worry about money, but when you really worry is when you got a problem in your family. It drives you crazy. It could be a lot of different things. Somebody get on dope. Oh, boy. It could be a lot of different things. Sick, traffic accident. So many things could go wrong. An aneurysm, stroke, heart attack. So many things can go wrong. And when it does, it seems like everything just falls apart. Your whole world stops, and you hear a ringing in your ears. There's only one thing that matters at that time, And that's that problem. You don't care about money, you don't care about a new car, you don't care about your house payment, you don't care about anything. The only thing you're concerned about is that person that you love with all your heart. And if you were to sow bountifully, and let's say you didn't really reap excess in finances, but you reaped excess in family well-being, I think you've hit the jackpot. I don't know what more I could possibly ask for than for my family to be well. I just don't think, I can't think of anything else. I mean, that's it. At least for me, that's it. That's the most important thing in my life. Or you, the church. It's terribly troubling when somebody is ill or has a problem. It's very painful. A whole lot more than it is to have to tighten up the belt and pay attention to your pennies. You can look at sowing and reaping in a lot of different ways. It could be financially. A person might sow bountifully. They might reap bountifully. I mean, I don't know. But I'm saying that's not the only way we can prosper, by being a generous giver. A generous giver means that I appreciate divine grace. You know, sometimes little kids, you buy them a little toy at Christmas or their birthday or whatever. How many times, and we've all seen it, the kid gets that toy out of the box, and what do? Set aside the toy and play with the box. I mean, they get a bigger kick out of the box than they do the toy, because they can see things they can do with that box that's going to be fun. They don't appreciate the toy. Well, with children, you expect that because they're children. They don't know the difference, how to prioritize or value things, and it doesn't break our heart. But when big people do that, when you do somebody good, or you help someone in some kind of assistance, and they don't seem to appreciate it at all, that kind of hits you in the gut. It's not that you expect them to bubble over and tear up and all that, but thank you at least, huh? I mean, you would think at least a thank you, and sometimes you don't even see the thank you, and it's disturbing. We've had people that came to us, the church, needing assistance, financial assistance, and we've helped. And they didn't seem to appreciate it at all, and they left. Maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, they come back needing assistance again. You know, the first time we were eager to help. Second time, not so much. Things changed. Our attitude towards them changed because of their attitude in general. And a lot of times they don't get anything the second time. A person who appreciates a gift or a hand up, you're much more likely to help a second time if they need it. And it's not uncommon that that's the case. Well, do you think it's any different with the Lord? I mean, where did we get this attitude? We've all got basically the same attitude. Where did we get it from? Weren't we made in His image? Didn't a lot of this come from our being made in the divine image? I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case at all. He who sows bountifully reaps bountifully. That's the rule. Yeah, I mean that's the only thing you can take with you to the next world. You ever think of that? Take your family. You can't take your house. Can't take your farm. Can't take your bank account. The only thing you can take with you to the next world is your people around you, people you influence. I mean, golly, how do you ask for more than that? I mean, that's it. That's the top of the mountain. So, let each one give as he purposes in his heart. We have to decide in our heart how to give, what we should give. Don't do it grudgingly or because you have to. That's not good. Because God loves a cheerful giver. If I only give because I have to give, I don't believe the Lord's going to approve of my giving. More important, I believe, to God than whatever it is I give is the fact that I want to do this. I want to do this because He's blessed me and I have the ability to do it. When I'm happy to give because I can, I think that's what God watches, the heart. So it's very important that we have the right attitude. I can remember when I gave because I had to. Yeah, I say these things. I'm not proud of it, okay? But I say these things because I want you to understand that I understand what it's like. I had to grow as a Christian to change my attitudes, and thank God I did. But it can be difficult sometimes. And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, all grace. Bless us in so many different ways. He is able, He's capable of doing this. And He wants to do this. He wants to bless us because He's who He is. He's a giver. He loves to give. It makes Him happy to give. But we got to give Him a reason. And the reason is that our hearts are right. That's the reason. It's like we talked about a moment ago. A person who doesn't appreciate a love offering, you're less likely to give them a second. Why? It's because of their attitude. It's going to come back to attitude. God is capable. He is able to make all grace abound towards each one of us, that you, always having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. He wants people to have an abundance. He wants us to have an abundance. But there's a reason for it. It's not just so that we could have a lot of money, but so we can help others along the way. Somebody's got to have the money. If we're going to help other people, if we're going to help people in India, somebody's got to have the money. And the people who has the money gives their money so that the people who need our money can be benefited by it. And God blesses us in that way. And He makes us able. Just like He's somebody, well, I don't have any money. And a guy sitting there with $1 million in the bank. I don't have any money. Well, that's between you and God. You lie to me, big deal. I mean, I believe more lies than anybody you know. It doesn't matter if you lie to me and get away with it. It's between you and God. Everything's between you and God. And that's all that matters. That's all that matters. God is able to make all grace abound toward you, so that you, having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work that comes our way. As it is written, He has dispersed abroad, He has given to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. Now may He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiplied the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness. The generosity of the Macedonians and the Corinthians are going to be a blessing to all the churches around, all the churches in Galatia, in Asia Minor, and in Judea, where the funds are going. And because of their generosity, the very idea that these Gentiles were willing to reach out and help these Jews, it's just going to be motivating for everybody else. And in addition to that, the church is going to grow numerically, because these Christian people have got something and I want a piece of it. That's sometimes the way it starts. These are a unique people. They are a family-oriented people. They're obviously being blessed by God, and I want to be blessed by God as well. And people turn to Christ and learn from Him and then follow Him. It all works together, hand in hand. While you are enriched in everything for all liberality, which causes thanksgiving through us to God. God is glorified in all these things. For the administration of this service not only supplies the needs of the saints, but also is abounding through many thanksgivings to God. Not only puts food in their belly, but what I mentioned a moment ago, all the added benefits from their liberality. While through the proof of this ministry, they glorify God for the obedience of your confession to the gospel of Christ and for your liberal sharing with them and all men. By their prayer for you, who long for you, because of the exceeding grace of God in you, thanks be to God for His indescribable gift. We don't know the limits of what our money may go. We never know. When we help people by prayer, when we help people financially, we don't know where it goes from there. One of the things that we've done that has impressed people so much through the years, I hear a lot about it, is having dinners for people in the death of a family member. There have been so many people who have written after going back home and commending the church here for their generosity and love on behalf of their family member, who either they or one of their family members was a member of our congregation. And where does that go from there? Does that person implement a program like that in the congregation where they are? I don't know. Does it have an effect on another congregation? I don't know. I don't know where it goes. I know it goes, and I know it's meaningful. Does it ever lead somebody to think about where they are in life and where they need to be? You know, sometimes during a loss of someone, sometimes we're touched more by the graciousness of people than we are at other times. Sometimes it leaves a more lasting impression in our minds and on our hearts. And sometimes the goodness of people can cause us to look at ourselves and see if we are who we want to be. Do I want to be me, or do I want to be like these people? Do I want what these people have? How many people have been led to Christ from such an effort? I don't know. I don't know any of those things. The only thing I do know is that such things happen. We don't know how far out it goes. But when we do good for somebody, know this, it goes. I think I'm at the end of this chapter. I forgot how many verses it's got. Yeah. We'll just stop and start next week, Lord willing, on chapter 10. I mentioned a moment ago, we'll probably go through these chapters pretty quick because they're very self-explanatory. We got over the doctrinal part, which was more challenging, and these chapters are pretty easy to go through. That's the first time.